From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where you can look a gift horse in the mouth, but I recommend not trying to look up his ass. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all Smarmaladians at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. We are just bursting with effervescent joy that you could join us this evening. Here's your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 16 May. Okay, full disclosure, it's actually 17 May because I did cheat a little bit and I put a Saturday story in the Friday slot, but you will understand why in about 12 to 13 minutes, so just trust your correspondent on this one, is all I'm saying. Dateline 10 Downing Street in the Emirate of Londonistan, Monday, 12 May. Well, matters have not improved, not even one little bit, for Sir Keir and the Starmtroopers since last we checked in with him. In fact, things got so bad this week that Sir Keir himself, Starmtrooper number 1, had to stand before the British nation on Monday with that inimitable facial expression of his looking like a deer in the headlights who is also an adolescent girl who just saw a penis for the first time, and explained that, yeah, okay, we were either lying the whole time or we really are just that stupid and incompetent, so take your pick, I guess. But the point is, we admit that the last quarter century of unchecked mass migration might not have been the best thing in the world. It might not have unlocked all of the wondrous economic benefits we said it would. It may have degraded our common culture just a tiny bit, just like Enoch Powell told us it would, 65 years ago now? And you know how very much it pains us to say something that can be seen as vindicating Enoch Powell, so I trust that impresses upon you the gravity of the situation, which is to say we, your ruling class, the people with all the titles and the knighthoods and the fancy post-nominal letters, we really are just as stupid as you fine people have always suspected us of being. But we stand before you today to convey our willingness to reverse and disavow and repudiate every single thing we have ever said and thought, if you will just promise to please not make us give up power, because we really like power a lot. I'm sure you understand. And here it is, out of Sir Keir's own facehole. Listen to this load of fiery right-wing invective directly from the Labour Party Prime Minister. Quote, "People should commit to integration and learning our language, and the system should distinguish between those that do and those that don't. That's fair. And Christ, the only thing that would make that scene better is if a couple of London Metro cops, females of course, with their cute little yellow safety vests, rushed into the scene and charged the rostrum and took Sir Keir into custody on suspicion of a public disorder offense likely to cause thoughts of xenophobia in the mind of some hypothetical person somewhere. Because, I mean, come on! If the average British person posted those very exact same words on Facebook, there is a non-zero chance that is exactly the sequence of events that they could look forward to. And we've got hundreds and thousands of videos now out there of British cops coming to people's houses and arresting them on suspicion of racially insensitive social media posts. But you will bear in mind also, Sir Keir, Earl of Starmtrooper Meadows, he's not the first Prime Minister we have heard disingenuously bloviating in this manner. Hell, we have probably heard it all the way from every Prime Minister all the way back to Theresa May, where the PM gets up there and goes, okay, fine, we admit it, mass migration. It might not be as great as we've played it up to be, but darn it, we have heard your voices and we promise to get those numbers down just as soon as we possibly can. And then, of course, the numbers continue going up by an order of magnitude for another dozen years in a row or so. But Sir Keir, I think, is probably in the most untenable position you can be in for a first-year Prime Minister, which it seems hard to believe that he still is. So he doesn't actually have to call an election until 2029, I believe, but with his personal brand in the toilet and his party's brand in the toilet, I still give him at maximum the 18 months I gave him when he first took over, and I stand ready to laugh at all of my British critics who said that was just a pipe dream on my part, because I have had a few pipe dreams in my time, but that was not one of them. Dateline Milwaukee, Tuesday, 13 May. Milwaukee Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan, whom I continue to maintain is in fact the female doppelganger of Minnesota Governor Tampon Tim Walz, was indicted by a grand jury this week for her antics back on the 18th of April when she decided to cosplay the resistance, as you do, and facilitate the escape from her courthouse of a criminal illegal alien who was otherwise about to be taken into custody by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE to their friends. Judge Hannah, or the artist formerly known as Judge Hannah, I think we can now safely call her, she faces a minimum of 6 years, or maximum of 6 years in prison, and a $350,000 fine for doing this thing that she inexplicably chose to do, allegedly, but don't take this reporter's word for it. Let's let the indictment do the talking. Count 1, quote, the grand jury alleges that on or about April 18th, 2025, in the state and eastern district of Wisconsin, Hannah C. Dugan knowingly concealed EFR, a person for whose arrest a warrant and process had been issued under the provisions of a law of the United States, so as to prevent the discovery and arrest of EFR, after notice and knowledge of the fact that a warrant and process had been issued for the apprehension of EFR. Count 2, quote, the grand jury further charges that on or about April 18th, 2025, in the state and eastern district of Wisconsin, Hannah C. Dugan did corruptly endeavor to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper administration of the law under which a pending proceeding was being had before a department and agency of the United States, namely the administrative arrest of EFR for purposes of removal proceedings conducted by the United States Department of Homeland Security, by committing affirmative acts to assist EFR to evade arrest, end quote. And you know what? You'll forgive me for the sudden and perhaps drastic shift of topic, but I wonder the same thing about Judge Hannah that I do about former FBI Director and certified ignoramus James Comey. The thing I wonder is, what was their mental best case scenario when they chose to do the thing they did? When Judge Hannah made the choice to plan and facilitate the escape of a fugitive from justice? Did she imagine there would be no price to pay on her end, that she could continue being a judge, that she would be proclaimed some hero of the resistance and get to go on The View? I mean, what? Which, granted, she may still get to do, but you'll have to ask the Federal Bureau of Prisons what their rules are on such things. I don't know. And when Jim Comey made the choice to tweet out a very thinly veiled implicit threat of violence upon the current president of the United States, how did he think that was going to go? Did he think he was going to parlay that into a week of cable news hits and fun sit-down interviews on all the late-night shows? Hell, maybe if things play out right, a Netflix documentary and a 7-figure book advance, who knows? Now, how long ago was it that Comey wrote his last memoir? Wasn't it like 7 or 8 years ago? So basically what we're looking at is, the dude spent all the money from the last book advance. He needs a new book advance in order to maintain the lifestyle to which he has grown accustomed, and instead, well, he's probably going to prison. And what's worse, he doesn't even have the option of swapping out his gender and sharing a cell with Judge Hannah over at the women's prison. So, good work, Jim. Good work, Judge Hannah. You have both really crowned yourselves in glory this week. Dateline, the French goddamn Riviera, Wednesday, 14 May. Former actor and current ridiculous geriatric buffoon Robert De Niro used the occasion of his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Cannes Film Festival to say a bunch of bad things about Donald Trump. In fact, the same bunch of things we hear him say each time someone makes the dreadful mistake of putting his mouth next to a live microphone. Now, when is the last time I heard Robert De Niro make any public statement that wasn't about Donald Trump? Well, I can't say. It's been quite a while. Probably most of a decade, seems like. Now, how many hours in an average day does Robert De Niro spend thinking about Donald Trump? Well, I can't say that either. But if I'm making an educated guess, I'm saying it's not 0, and it's not 24, but it's probably closer to the latter than the former. And look, for as much as it's easy, low-hanging comedic fruit to mock this man who has set himself up as such an easy target for mockery, we should still, I think, take a moment to remark on how sad this is when a great actor with a formidable body of work who has made more bona fide contributions to the culture than most people have spends the final years of his life reducing himself to a comic stooge who just wants the youngsters to think he's cool. We saw it this week with Bruce Springsteen as well, and what is either man achieving here except to debase himself personally and to diminish his own contributions to the common culture? Because I don't know about you, but I've always been fairly good at separating a man's artistic output from his dumbass politics, and I thought I would always be able to do that with De Niro. Springsteen I was never a fan of, so he can go get fucked for all I care. But with De Niro, for a long time, I was able to keep the whole thing compartmentalized in my own mind. Just try to ignore all the embarrassing comedy cash grabs that he did after age 65. Try to ignore his idiotic current-day politics. And just enjoy the contributions that he made to our cinematic lexicon back in the days when he was a talented actor. But I can't do that anymore. The idiotic 84-year-old version of Bob De Niro who just wants to blubber about the bad orange man, who never does anything except blubber about the bad orange man, he's knocked down those walls that I tried to build for him inside my own psyche. So I hope it was worth it. making it so I can't really watch anything he's done anymore and just enjoy the performances on their own merits. The bitter geriatric version of Bob De Niro has thus decreed that unless you agree with his political views today in the 2020s, well, he doesn't really want you seeing any value in any aspect of his prior acting career. And why does he do it? Why do any of them do it? What benefit do they think redounds to them personally when weighed against the accrued cultural capital that they wind up spending as part of the bargain? Is it so the youngsters will think they're cool? Is it so they get lots of upvotes on social media? I mean, which thing would you rather have etched on your tombstone when you get right down to it? Would you rather have timeless immortal artist whose works spoke to multiple generations, or tiny insignificant barnacle on the hull of the USS Donald Trump? And I guess ultimately, that's your own damn business which one you pick. Free country and all that. Dateline, Associated Press land, wherever that is. Thursday, 15 May. And a story that serves as a powerful reminder of why do we do this mindless tribalism thing when it makes us so miserable? 2/3 of registered Democrats report that they are ravaged with despair over the current state of their party. And who can say, really, which is the biggest ingredient in this stew of Democrat melancholy? Maybe it's the secure border, maybe it's the awesome trade deals, maybe it is the wholesale reshoring of vast swaths of our manufacturing sector that we only offshored in the first place because we were a bunch of damned fools. Maybe it's the stock market that stubbornly remains up for the year despite the best efforts of the media Democrat complex to openly cheerlead for a total economic collapse. Because yeah, guys, no idea why those trust and approval numbers are so far down the commode. Maybe when you go on television and root for the country to fail, your own voters don't like it all that much, more than the other voters do. Or the independents do. Or anybody does, really, for that matter. Maybe rooting for your country to fail is just a bad look. Maybe when the American president does well, when he strikes a deal that's unambiguously a good thing for the people of the country, it's okay to politely applaud. Or at least not tie yourself into the most ridiculous sorts of intellectual pretzel shapes, trying to argue that it's the worst thing in the world and everybody should be ashamed of it. But for as long as the corporate fake news media continue to exist, we will continue to get that. But then you find people don't need me to tell you that because you get your news and your commentary from real journalists, present company included. But sometimes, when I read poll numbers, and maybe you're the same way, but I always find myself being fascinated by the people who are in the minority number. For example, in this poll, this Associated Press /NORC, Center for Public Affairs Research poll, whatever the hell that means, I can't help fixating on the 35% of Democrats who say they are somewhat or very optimistic about the future of the party. The party that used the corpse of Joe Biden as the bookmark in the story of Donald Trump. The party that tells its voters with a straight face that feminism means your daughter getting her nose crushed into the dirt by a male opponent on the sporting field and then him waving his lady penis in her face afterward in the changing room. The party that thinks all Ivy League graduation ceremonies should look like full-on Hamas rallies, with nothing but keffiyehs and Palestine flags as far as the eye can see, and who knows, maybe we can look forward to yellow stars of David for the Jewish graduates next year. Unclear. Maybe subscribe to the Columbia University Twitter feed. I dare you to, but be ready. I mean, if you like a constant stream of Islamic terrorism adjacent content, but hey, I ain't here to judge. The party that absolutely sparkly hearts the same open-ended foreign nation-building military adventures that they used to so revile. Well, sure, of course I want to go spread democracy by the point of a sword. It's what all the cool kids are doing. Just as long as the Democrat president's doing it, I'm cool with it. The party that told you Joe Biden was still totally good to serve another 4 years, damn it. He's the best Joe Biden ever. For whatever that's worth. Right up until he performed so dismally in the first debate that they found their position suddenly completely untenable. So like reasonable people, they knifed their own president in the back and chucked him out the nearest window. Now, what do you suppose the average Democrat would say if we asked him, what are the unifying principles of the Democrat Party that have always held true throughout your life as a registered Democrat? I think the only possible answer is the racial identitarianism stuff, and I think that's sad. Dateline New York City, Saturday, 17 May. Wait! I hear you say, did I just bastardize the rules of the game and run a Saturday story in place of the traditional Friday story? Why, yes, as a matter of fact, that is exactly what I've done. And would I ever do a thing like that except in the most exceptional of circumstances? I would not. So what occasion rises to the level of such gravity as to warrant such an unprecedented breach of the normal protocols? Well, you tell me. How often does a Mexican Navy sailing ship declare war on the Brooklyn Bridge? And spoiler alert, The bridge won the battle, which, if I was a more callous man than I am, I might say that's the most significant surface action in which the Mexican Navy has been involved since, well, ever. But I am not that man, and I would never say something like that. Now, there's a number of questions you might have here right off the bat. Number one, there's a Mexican Navy? Yes, apparently there is, and who knew? Number two, is it normal for 21st century navies to still have sailing warships in commission? Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, the Brits have got HMS Victory still afloat, still in commission. We've got our own humble little USS Constitution, Old Ironsides to our friends. Still afloat, still in commission, but you know what the difference is between this and that? Victory and Constitution, they don't sail 1,000 miles away from their home port to get defeated by a foreign bridge. And shout out also to Washington Augustus Roebling, am I right? Son of John Augustus Roebling, architect of that very same Brooklyn Bridge, for you uncultured ruffians who don't know that. He may not have conceived the bridge, but he damn well finished building the thing after his old man died. And what other kind of service did that man render to his country? I am glad you asked. Little Round Top Hill, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, Thursday, 2 July, 1863. Second Lieutenant George Washington Roebling, Company K, 6th New York Independent Battery. He is among the first to reconnoiter that fateful hill that will play such a pivotal role in the events of the next 72 hours, where so many of the greatest men this nation ever produced would etch their very names on the tablet of history. And he took a good look around and he reported back to his commander, Colonel Strong Vincent, a man who would lose his own life on that self-same hill the very next day. And he said, "Yes, sir, we can fight the enemy here, and we will give him a frightful whooping." He didn't actually say that. I just like to imagine that he would have said something like that. But by the end of the war, Lieutenant Roebling, he has gotten himself brevetted all the way up to goddamn bird colonel. And it's not because he's a fancy rich kid from New York City. It's because he's a fucking badass, and he distinguishes himself on several fields of battle after Gettysburg, like we expect a man to do if we are going to call him a fucking badass, because we are not a nation that bestows that title lightly. And in later life, he becomes the guy who finished the work of building the Brooklyn Bridge, a bridge that's been in active daily operation for over 140 years now. It will likely stand for 1,000 years more, and she is still in good enough shape to defeat the flagship of the Mexican Navy. And if that doesn't make you want to stand and salute and say, "America, fuck yeah," well, I'm going to report you for being a dirty communist. I feel like I have talked for an unusually long time. Have I talked for an unusually long time? Well, I guess that's not for me to say, really. In any event, the roundup is over now, so you will have to suffer through the remainder of the show that I did not write ahead of time. And with that, I pass the rhinestone-studded baton over to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, keeping the Georgia wilderness safe from Yankee spies since at least 1863, but that's as far back as the records go. The one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.